On a forgotten stretch of Montana highway, Jack Hartley pulled his weathered pickup to the shoulder, drawn by something he couldn't quite name. There, beside a rusted truck abandoned in the tall grass, stood a chestnut mare, her ribs visible beneath a matted coat, chained to the bumper like a discarded memory. Jack had spent 30 years running from ghosts, but something in that horse's eyes stopped him cold. What he thought would be a simple act of mercy became the beginning of a journey neither of them expected. Hidden inside that abandoned truck were letters, photographs, and a worn leather journal that told a story of loss, loyalty, and a promise someone failed to keep. But what Jack would discover about the horse's past would force him to face a truth he'd been avoiding for years. What happens when saving something else becomes the only way to save yourself? Before we continue, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning light filtered through the pine trees surrounding Jack Hartley's cabin, casting long shadows across the worn wooden deck. He'd been awake since 4:30, same as every morning for the past 30 years. Old habits died hard, especially the ones the military had drilled into you until they became as natural as breathing. He sat at his small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of black coffee, staring at nothing in particular. The cabin was small, neat, efficient. Everything had its place. His bed was made with hospital corners. His boots sat by the door, laces tucked inside. The counters were clear, except for the coffee maker and a single plate in the drying rack. It was the kind of order that came from decades of military discipline, but also from having no one to make a mess with, no one to move things around, no one to leave their mark on your space. Jack was 63 years old, though some days he felt twice that. His hair had gone silver years ago, cut short and practical. His face was weathered from sun and wind and time, creased with lines that told stories he didn't like to revisit. He was still strong, still moved with the controlled economy of a man trained for combat, but there was a weariness in his eyes that no amount of sleep could cure. The dog tags sat in his glove compartment. He'd taken them off the day he retired, couldn't quite bring himself to throw them away, couldn't quite stand to wear them either. 28 years in Delta Force, operations across 5 continents, missions that would never be declassified, actions that would never see the light of day. He'd been good at it, too. Excellent, if the commendations were anything to go by. Jack Hartley had been a man with purpose, with direction, with a team that depended on him, and a mission that mattered. That was a long time ago. Now he lived alone in a cabin 40 minutes outside Bozeman, Montana. He'd bought the place with Sarah, his wife, planning for retirement together. They'd had dreams of how they'd spend their days, hiking, reading, finally having time to just be together after all those years of deployments and separations. They'd had 3 years. 3 years before the cancer took her, swift and merciless as any enemy he'd ever faced. That had been 3 years ago. Jack hadn't known what to do with himself since. The cabin was supposed to be their refuge, their reward for a lifetime of service and waiting. Instead, it had become a prison of memories, every corner holding some ghost of what should have been. His daughter Emma called sometimes. Not often. Their relationship had fractured somewhere during her teenage years, when he'd missed one too many recitals, one too many birthdays, one too many moments that you can't get back. She was 31 now, living in Seattle, working in tech. She had her own life, a life he'd barely been part of building. They spoke perhaps once a month, careful conversations that skirted around the real issues, the real hurt. Sarah had asked him near the end to fix things with Emma. "Don't wait," she'd said, her hand thin and cold in his. "Don't let pride or fear keep you from your daughter. Life's too short, Jack. I need to know you won't be alone," he'd promised. Of course he'd promised, but 3 years later he still didn't know how to bridge that gap, how to reach across all that lost time and say the things that needed saying. So he kept to his routines: coffee at dawn, a drive into town for supplies every Thursday, occasional odd jobs for neighbors who needed an extra pair of hands. It was enough to fill the hours, but not enough to fill the emptiness. That Thursday morning, Jack had loaded up his truck for the weekly run into Bozeman. He needed groceries, a few things from the hardware store, maybe lunch at the diner where nobody bothered him much. It was the kind of day he'd had 100 times before, unremarkable and predictable. He took the long route, Highway 287, through the valley. Traffic was light this time of year, late September with the tourist season winding down. The mountains stood sharp against the blue sky, already dusted with early snow at their peaks. It was beautiful country, the kind of landscape that should have brought him peace. Instead, Jack barely noticed it anymore. His mind wandered as he drove, tracking nothing in particular. What he'd make for dinner, whether the Hendersons still needed help with their fence, if he should call Emma this weekend or wait for her to call him. The same circular thoughts he'd had for 3 years, leading nowhere. That's when he saw the truck. It was parked in the tall grass, about 50 yards off the highway, a rusted-out Ford from the 70s, maybe early 80s. Windows broken, paint faded to almost nothing. Not an unusual sight out here. People abandoned vehicles all the time, left them to rot when they weren't worth fixing or towing. But there was something else, movement. Jack slowed, squinting through the windshield. There, tethered to the truck's rear bumper by a heavy chain, was a horse. A chestnut mare, standing with her head low, ribs visible even from this distance. The chain was short, maybe 6 feet, giving her barely enough room to move. There was no water visible, no feed, no shelter from the elements. Jack's foot hit the brake without conscious thought. He pulled onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under his tires. For a long moment he just sat there, engine idling, hands on the wheel. Every instinct told him to keep driving. This wasn't his problem. Someone would report it eventually. The authorities would handle it. But he couldn't look away from that horse. She wasn't moving much, just standing there with a kind of defeated stillness that Jack recognized. He'd seen it before, in men who'd been pushed past their limits and found nothing left inside to fight with. It was the posture of someone who'd given up hope. Jack turned off the engine. The silence of the valley settled around him, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk and the whisper of wind through the grass. He opened the door and stepped out, his boots solid on the packed earth. The mare heard him coming, her head lifted slightly, ears swiveling toward him, but she didn't try to move away. Didn't have anywhere to go, chained as she was. Jack approached slowly, hands visible, the way you'd approach anything frightened and hurting. He'd never been much of a horse person, but Sarah had loved them. She'd grown up riding, had talked sometimes about getting a couple horses for the property. Another dream that died with her. Up close, the mare's condition was worse than he'd thought. Her coat was matted and dull, burrs tangled in her mane and tail. The chain had rubbed raw spots on her neck where the halter sat. Her hooves were overgrown, cracked. But it was her eyes that got him. Deep brown, watching him with a mix of fear and something else. Not quite hope, but maybe the memory of what hope used to feel like. "Easy, girl," Jack said quietly. His voice sounded strange in the stillness, rough from disuse. He didn't talk much these days, living alone. "I'm not going to hurt you." The mare trembled but held her ground. Jack moved to check the abandoned truck, keeping his movements slow and predictable. The driver's door hung open, rusted hinges groaning in the breeze. Inside was a disaster of scattered belongings. Old blankets, empty feed sacks, a jumble of papers and trash. The seats were torn, springs poking through. Everything was weathered, sun-bleached, forgotten. Jack's training kicked in automatically. He assessed the scene with the same tactical eye he'd used in hostile territory. How long had this truck been here? The license plate was from Wyoming, caked with mud, but still readable. The registration sticker was expired. 5 years expired. 5 years. Jack looked back at the mare. She couldn't have been here that long. She'd be dead. Someone must have left her more recently, maybe thinking the truck was still in use, maybe not caring either way. The thought stirred something in Jack's chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Anger, yes, but also something else. Purpose, maybe, direction. He pulled out his phone, dialed the sheriff's office, reported the abandoned animal, gave them the location. They'd send someone out, they said. Might take a few hours. Was the horse in immediate danger? Jack looked at the mare again, at her hollow flanks and dull coat, and those eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Yes," he said. "She needs help now. He hung up before they could tell him to wait, to let them handle it. Jack Hartley had spent 3 years waiting, letting life happen to him instead of taking action. Something about this horse, this moment, this quiet act of cruelty cut through the fog he'd been living in. He couldn't just leave her here. Jack went back to his truck and found a gallon jug of water he kept for emergencies. He grabbed an old plastic bowl from behind the seat, the one he'd used when Sarah's dog was still alive. The collie had passed 2 years back, another loss in a string of them. He hadn't been able to bring himself to throw away her things. He poured water into the bowl and approached the mare again, moving with deliberate slowness. She watched him, nostrils flaring slightly as she caught the scent of the water. When he set the bowl down within her reach, she hesitated only a moment before lowering her head to drink. She drank desperately, gulping it down so fast Jack worried she'd make herself sick. "Slow down," he murmured, but didn't pull the bowl away. How long had it been since she'd had water? Days probably, maybe longer. While she drank, Jack examined the chain more closely. It was heavy gauge, padlocked to both the halter and the truck's bumper. No way to free her without bolt cutters. He'd have to come back with tools or wait for the sheriff. But waiting felt wrong. Every minute she stood here was another minute of suffering. He refilled the bowl twice more before the mare finally stopped drinking and raised her head, water dripping from her muzzle. She looked at him with what might have been gratitude, or maybe just exhaustion. Jack found himself reaching out slowly, letting her sniff his hand before touching her neck. Her coat was rough under his palm, but she didn't pull away. "You've been through it, haven't you?" Jack said quietly. The mare's ear swiveled toward him, listening. "Yeah, me too." He spent the next 20 minutes going through the truck more carefully, looking for anything that might explain the situation. The glove compartment hung open, empty except for a tattered registration that confirmed the Wyoming plates, registered to a Thomas Mercer in Laramie County. The registration had expired in 2020, 5 years ago. In the truck bed under a rotting tarp, Jack found some old tools, a spare tire that had gone flat long ago, and a hay net that had probably once held feed. The mare must have eaten that hay years back. Whoever left her here recently hadn't provided anything. Jack circled the truck again, his soldier's instincts looking for details others might miss. That's when he noticed it, wedged under the passenger seat where it had probably fallen and been forgotten. A corner of leather, dark brown, and cracked with age. He reached in through the broken window and pulled it free. A journal. The leather cover was water-stained and sun-faded, but intact. No name on the outside, no identifying marks except a small cross embossed in the corner. Jack opened it carefully. The pages were yellowed, some stuck together from moisture, but the handwriting was still legible. Strong, masculine script that started out neat and careful at the beginning of the journal, but grew shakier as the entries progressed. The first entry was dated March 15th, 2019. "Doc says I need to start writing things down. Says it might help me remember, or at least give me something to look back on when the forgetting gets bad. Don't know what good it'll do. But Sarah always said I was stubborn about everything except doing what doctors told me. Guess some habits die hard. The Alzheimer's is early stage still, but it's there. Real as the fence posts. Real as copper standing in the pasture." Jack's throat tightened. Alzheimer's, he kept reading. "Lily asked me yesterday why I keep checking the stove, even though I just checked it. Didn't know what to tell her. She's only 8. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that her grandpa's mind is starting to slip away? Her mama died when she was 4. Daddy never was in the picture. I'm all she's got. And I'm forgetting." Jack flipped through more pages. Entries about daily life on a ranch. Worries about cattle prices and fence repairs and whether the truck would make it through another winter. Mentions of Lily's school activities, her report cards, her love for the horses. Especially one horse. Copper and Lily are inseparable. That mare follows that girl around like a shadow. Never seen such a bond. Lily talks to her about everything, tells her all the secrets she won't tell me. It's good. Every kid should have something that loves them unconditional like that. Makes me think of my Sarah and her old paint horse when she was young. Some things run in families. The entries grew shorter as they progressed, more repetitive. Sometimes the same sentence appeared multiple times on a page, as if Thomas had forgotten he'd already written it. Need to remember to feed Copper. Need to remember Lily's school play Thursday. Need to remember. Need to remember. Jack turned more pages, watching Thomas Mercer's mind deteriorate in real time through his own handwriting. The entries became confused. Sometimes mid-sentence, the subject would change completely. Dates were written wrong, corrected, written wrong again. Then about 2/3 through the journal, a longer entry. The handwriting was shaky but determined, like Thomas had forced himself to focus for this one moment of clarity. September 2021. Had a bad spell yesterday. Found myself standing in the barn with no idea how I got there or what I was doing. Lily found me. She was scared. I was scared. Called Doc Mitchell and he says it's time. Time for a facility. Time to admit I can't take care of myself anymore. Can't take care of Lily. Social services already called. Catherine, my sister-in-law, she'll take Lily. Lives up in Montana. Good woman. She'll do right by the girl. But Copper? What about Copper? Catherine says she can't take a horse. No room, no money for the upkeep. I promised Lily I'd never let anything happen to Copper. Promised her mama the same before she passed. Some promises you can't break. But I don't know what to do. I'm forgetting everything else, but I remember that promise. Have to remember that promise. Jack's hands were steady as he turned to the final pages, but something in his chest felt tight. The last few entries were barely coherent. Words scratched out, repeated, trailing off mid-thought. But there, on the very last page with writing, Thomas had managed one more clear sentence. Must get Copper to Lily, must keep promise. Can't forget. After that, blank pages. The journal ended there, the promise unfinished, the story incomplete. Jack closed the journal carefully and looked at the mare. Copper. Her name was Copper. She wasn't just an abandoned horse. She was someone's beloved companion, the subject of a desperate man's final lucid thoughts, the center of a little girl's world. And somewhere that little girl had lost everything. Her mother, her grandfather, and this horse, who Thomas Mercer had loved enough to write about, even as his mind crumbled, who he'd made a promise about, even as he forgot everything else. Jack walked back to Copper, the journal tucked under his arm. She watched him approach, and this time when he reached out to stroke her neck, she leaned into his touch just slightly. I'm going to find her, Jack said quietly. Lily, I'm going to find her, and I'm going to get you back to her. That's a promise. The mare couldn't understand his words, but something in his tone must have registered. Her ears pricked forward, alert now instead of defeated. Jack heard a vehicle approaching on the highway. He turned to see a sheriff's deputy pulling onto the shoulder behind his truck. The cavalry had arrived, but Jack had already made his decision. He wasn't leaving this horse to the system, to be processed and possibly sold or put down if no owner could be found. He knew what happened to abandoned animals when nobody claimed them. He had Thomas's journal. He had a name, Lily, and a sister-in-law named Catherine in Montana. He had a mission now, the first real purpose he'd felt since Sarah died. The deputy, a young woman with her hair pulled back in a neat bun, approached with a clipboard. You the one who called it in? I am. Jack Hartley. He extended his hand and she shook it firmly. Deputy Martinez. How long you think she's been here? Hard to say. Not more than a few days or she'd be dead. But the truck's been here a lot longer. Jack showed her the expired registration. Martinez walked around the mare, taking notes, photographing the scene. We'll need to get animal control out here, get her to the county facility. No, Jack said, and the word came out with more force than he intended. I'll take her. Martinez looked at him with skepticism. Sir, with respect, do you have any experience with horses? Any facilities to keep her? This animal needs veterinary care, proper shelter, specialized feeding to get her weight back up safely. I have property. I can set up a shelter. And I have a friend who's a vet. Jack surprised himself with how quickly the plan formed. He hadn't thought any of this through, but it felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. I'm not letting her go to some county facility where she'll be one more case file. This horse belonged to someone who loved her. She deserves better than that. The deputy studied him for a long moment. Jack met her gaze steadily, the way he'd faced down superior officers who questioned his field decisions. Finally, Martinez nodded slowly. You'll need to sign some papers. Take responsibility for her care. If she needs to be seized as evidence, or if an owner comes forward, you'll have to surrender her. Understood. And you'll need to get her vet checked within 48 hours. I want documentation. You'll have it. Martinez made some notes on her clipboard. You got a trailer? Jack hesitated. He didn't. I can get one. My uncle has a horse trailer. Lives about 20 minutes from here. Let me make a call. Martinez pulled out her phone and walked back toward her cruiser. Jack returned to Copper, running his hand along her neck. Hear that, girl? You're coming home with me. We're going to get you healthy again, and then we're going to find Lily. The mare's dark eyes regarded him with what might have been trust, or maybe just exhaustion. Either way, she didn't pull away from his touch. Martinez returned 15 minutes later. Uncle's bringing the trailer. Should be here in 20. He's also bringing bolt cutters for that chain. Thank you, Jack said and meant it. Don't thank me yet. You're taking on a big responsibility. That horse needs a lot of care. I know. While they waited, Jack went through the truck one more time, more thoroughly now. He pulled out everything that might be relevant. A few old bills with Thomas Mercer's name and a Laramie address. Some photographs that had been tucked in the sun visor, their colors faded, but images still visible. One showed a man in his 60s standing next to a younger woman who must have been his daughter. Both were smiling. Another photo showed a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, sitting on a chestnut horse. The girl's face was pure joy. Jack stared at that photograph for a long time. The little girl had blonde hair, pulled back in braids, wearing a pink t-shirt and jeans. The horse was clearly Copper, younger and healthier, her coat gleaming in the sunlight. On the back of the photo, in the same handwriting from the journal, someone had written, Lily and Copper, Summer 2019. He tucked the photos carefully into the journal and kept searching. Behind the passenger seat, wedged down in the crack, he found something else. A child's drawing, done in crayon on construction paper that had gone brittle with age. It showed a stick-figure girl next to a brown horse, both smiling. Above them, a yellow sun. Below, in careful letters that betrayed a young hand, I love you, Grandpa Tom. Love, Lily, age 8. Jack felt something crack open in his chest. The drawing was so innocent, so full of love. He thought of Emma at that age, the drawings she used to make for him that he'd been too busy to properly appreciate. The school art shows he'd missed because of deployments. All those moments he couldn't get back. He folded the drawing carefully and added it to the journal. These weren't just artifacts. They were pieces of a family torn apart by illness and circumstance. They were evidence of love that had nowhere to go, promises that had slipped through failing fingers. Martinez's uncle arrived with an older but serviceable 2-horse trailer. He was a weathered man in his 70s who introduced himself as Frank and asked no questions, just got to work with the bolt cutters. The chain snapped with a sharp crack that made Copper flinch. Easy, girl, Jack murmured, holding the lead rope they'd fashioned from Martinez's equipment. You're free now. Loading her into the trailer took patience. Copper balked at the ramp, clearly not having been transported in a long time, if ever by these strangers. But Jack didn't rush her. He stood at the base of the ramp, speaking in low, steady tones, and eventually she took a tentative step forward, then another. Finally, she walked up into the trailer, and Jack secured her carefully. Martinez handed him the paperwork. Get her to a vet. Keep me posted. And Mr. Hartley, good luck finding the girl. Thank you, Deputy. Jack drove home slowly, conscious of the precious cargo in the trailer behind him. The journal sat on the passenger seat beside him, and he kept glancing at it, his mind racing through possibilities. Catherine, the sister-in-law in Montana. That was a start. Montana wasn't a small state, but it was something. By the time he pulled into his property, he'd already made a dozen decisions. He'd call Rebecca Hayes first thing. She was the best large animal vet in the county, and more importantly, she'd understand. Rebecca had known Sarah, had been to the funeral, had checked on Jack a few times in those first terrible months after. She'd know he wasn't crazy for doing this. The property had a small barn that Jack had been using mostly for storage. It would need work, but it would do for now. He unloaded Copper carefully, leading her to the barn. She followed more willingly now, as if understanding somehow that this place was different, safer. Inside, Jack cleared out the junk he'd accumulated, old furniture and boxes of things he couldn't bring himself to deal with. He laid down fresh straw he kept for the neighbors' goats when they boarded them occasionally, found some old buckets and filled them with water. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than a chain in an empty field. Copper drank again, then stood in the center of the barn, taking in her new surroundings. Jack stayed with her, just being present, letting her adjust. The late afternoon sun slanted through gaps in the barn walls, and somewhere outside, a meadowlark sang its evening song. "I'm going to make this right," Jack told her. "I don't know how yet, but I will. Thomas couldn't keep his promise because his mind betrayed him, but I can keep it for him. I will keep it for him." The mare shifted her weight, her tail swishing once. Then she lowered her head and began to investigate the hay Jack had scattered on the ground. Not eating much yet, just sniffing, relearning what food was supposed to be. Jack pulled out his phone and called Rebecca. She answered on the third ring. "Jack, everything okay? I need your help. Can you come out to my place? It's urgent." There was a pause. Rebecca knew him well enough to hear the difference in his voice. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. While he waited, Jack sat on an overturned bucket and opened the journal again. He read it more carefully this time, looking for details he might have missed. Thomas wrote about the ranch in Wyoming, about cattle and horses and the endless work that came with it. He wrote about his daughter's death from a car accident when Lily was 4, about stepping up to raise his granddaughter alone, about how Copper had been a gift for Lily's 5th birthday, and how the two had bonded instantly. "That horse saved her," Thomas had written. "After losing her mama, Lily stopped talking for months. Wouldn't speak to me, to her teachers, to the counselor. But she talked to Copper, started with whispers, then regular voice, then she was chatting away like nothing had ever been wrong. That mare listened to everything, and Lily trusted her in a way she couldn't trust people anymore. Can't let anything happen to Copper. It would break Lily all over again." The entries about his diagnosis were matter-of-fact at first, almost clinical. But as the disease progressed, fear began to seep through the words. Fear of forgetting Lily's face, fear of not recognizing his own home, fear of what would happen to his granddaughter when he could no longer care for her. The final entries, the ones that were barely coherent, kept circling back to one thing: the promise. Getting Copper to Lily, making sure the horse found her way back to the girl who needed her. Thomas Mercer had died with that promise unfulfilled. The date on his obituary, which Jack had found on his phone while waiting for the trailer, was April 2022, nearly 4 years ago. 4 years. Where was Lily now? What had happened to her? Had Catherine taken good care of her? Was she happy? Did she still think about the horse she'd lost? Jack closed the journal as he heard Rebecca's truck coming up the drive. He stood, squaring his shoulders. This was just the beginning. Rebecca Hayes was a tall woman in her mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She'd been a veterinarian for 30 years, specializing in large animals, and Jack had never seen her rattled by anything. When she climbed out of her truck with her medical bag, her face was calm and professional, but her eyes were curious. "What's going on, Jack?" "Come see." He led her into the barn. Rebecca stopped in the doorway, taking in Copper's condition with one sweeping glance. Her expression didn't change, but Jack saw her jaw tighten. "How long has she been like this?" "I found her this morning, chained to an abandoned truck off Highway 287. No food, no water, no shelter." Jack handed her the journal. "This will explain the rest." While Rebecca examined Copper, running her hands expertly over the mare's body, checking her teeth, her hooves, her eyes, Jack gave her the abbreviated version of the story. Thomas Mercer, the Alzheimer's, the granddaughter named Lily, the broken promise. Rebecca worked in silence, her touch gentle but thorough. Copper stood still for the examination, as if she understood this person was trying to help. Finally, Rebecca straightened and pulled off her exam gloves. "She's dehydrated and malnourished, obviously. I'd estimate she's lost about 200 pounds from her ideal weight. Her hooves are in terrible shape, going to need a farrier. She's got some rain rot on her back, and those sores from the chain will need daily treatment. But..." Rebecca paused, meeting Jack's eyes. She's a tough one. With proper care, she'll recover. She wants to live. I can see it in her. What does she need? Slow refeeding. Her digestive system has been compromised. We need to introduce food gradually, good quality hay in small amounts, multiple times a day. I'll give you a detailed plan. She'll need supplements, medication for the sores, regular monitoring. It's going to be intensive for the first few weeks. I can do that. Rebecca tilted her head, studying him. Jack, I've known you for 8 years. Since you and Sarah bought this place. I've never seen you look like this. Like what? Alive. Present. Like you've got something to care about again. Jack looked away, uncomfortable with the observation, even though he knew it was true. The horse needs help. Yes, she does. But I think maybe you do too. Rebecca's voice was gentle. Sarah would be glad to see this. You're taking action. Caring about something. Jack's throat tightened. She asked me to reconnect with Emma before she died. I promised her I would. Have you? Not really. A phone call every few weeks. Careful conversations that don't say anything real. And this. Rebecca gestured at Copper. This mission to find Lily and return her horse. You see the parallel? Of course he did. Jack wasn't blind to his own psychology. A man who'd failed to bridge the gap with his own daughter, now desperate to reunite someone else's daughter with what she'd lost. It was transparent enough to be embarrassing. Maybe, he admitted, but that doesn't make it less important. That little girl lost everything. Her mother, her grandfather, and this horse that helped her survive the grief. If I can give her back even one of those things, shouldn't I try? Yes, Rebecca said simply. You should. And I'm going to help you. She spent the next hour showing Jack the treatment protocols, writing everything down in clear instructions. How much to feed, how often, what supplements to add, how to clean and treat the wounds. Signs to watch for that would indicate complications. She left him with medications, special feed she happened to have in her truck, and her personal cell number. Call me anytime. Day or night. I mean that. She paused at her truck door. Jack, I need to show you something. Rebecca reached into her glove compartment and pulled out a photograph. It was old, creased at the corners. It showed a teenage girl with Rebecca's eyes, sitting on a dark bay horse. My daughter, Michelle. She died 20 years ago. Car accident, drunk driver. She was 17. Rebecca's voice was steady but soft. That horse, Dakota, he was her whole world. After Michelle died, I couldn't keep him. It hurt too much to look at him. I sold him to another family. I told myself it was practical, that I didn't have time to care for him. But the truth is, I was running from the grief. She tucked the photo away. I think about that decision sometimes. Wonder if keeping Dakota might have helped me heal instead of just surviving. You're doing the right thing, Jack. For Copper, for Lily, and for yourself. Don't let anyone tell you different. After Rebecca left, Jack stood in the barn with Copper as the evening shadows lengthened. The mare stood quietly, occasionally shifting her weight or swishing her tail at an imaginary fly. Jack found himself talking to her the way he'd heard Sarah talk to the neighbors' horses when she'd helped feed them. I need to find something, he told Copper. Something that might help us locate Lily. He went back to his truck and retrieved the photographs he'd found in the abandoned vehicle. The one of Thomas with his daughter, the one of Lily sitting on Copper. Pure joy radiating from her young face. Jack studied that second photo more carefully now, in the better light of the barn. The picture had been taken in summer, the grass green and thick behind them. Lily wore a pink t-shirt with something written on it, though the image wasn't clear enough to read. Her blonde braids hung over her shoulders, but it was her smile that caught Jack. Open, genuine, unguarded. The smile of a child who felt safe and loved. He turned the photo over again. Lily and Copper, summer 2019. In the corner, barely visible, someone had written what looked like an address or location, but water damage had smeared the ink until it was illegible. Jack pulled out his phone and took a high-resolution photo of the back, thinking maybe he could enhance it later, see if any of those letters could be made out. It was a long shot, but he'd worked with less in his military days. The other photograph, the one of Thomas and his daughter, held different information. They stood in front of a house, a ranch style with a covered porch. In the background, Jack could make out part of a barn and what looked like a water tank. Rural Wyoming, probably the Mercer Ranch. The daughter looked to be in her 30s, with Lily's blonde hair and bright smile. The resemblance was striking. On the back of this one, more of Thomas's handwriting. Me and Katie, last Christmas together. 2012, Katie, Lily's mother, dead in a car accident when Lily was 4, according to the journal. Jack did the math. If Lily was 8 in 2019, when the last journal entries were written, she'd be 13 now. A teenager, living somewhere with an aunt named Catherine, who supposedly couldn't take the horse. Jack grabbed a notebook from his kitchen and started making a list. What he knew, what he needed to find out, what steps to take next. It was the same process he'd used in mission planning, breaking down complex problems into manageable pieces. Known facts: Thomas Mercer, Wyoming rancher. Died 2022. Daughter Katie died 2012. Granddaughter Lily, age 13. Sister-in-law Catherine Walsh, somewhere in Montana. Horse named Copper, now recovering in Jack's barn. Unknown, Catherine's exact location. Lily's current whereabouts. Whether they were even still together. Next steps. Search property records in Wyoming for Thomas Mercer's ranch. Look for Catherine Walsh in Montana databases. Check obituaries for Katie Mercer to see if they listed surviving family. Contact social services if necessary, though Jack suspected that would hit privacy walls fast. He worked late into the night, his laptop open at the kitchen table, searching databases and public records. He found Thomas's obituary easily enough. Thomas James Mercer, 71, of Laramie County, Wyoming, passed peacefully at Meadowbrook Care Facility. Preceded in death by his wife Sarah, his daughter Catherine, and his parents. Survived by his granddaughter Lily. No mention of Catherine. No mention of Copper. No mention of anything that gave Jack a clear path forward. But he kept digging. Property records showed the ranch had been sold at auction in 2022, shortly after Thomas's death. The buyer was a development company, probably planning to subdivide it. Another piece of Thomas's life erased, paved over. It was past midnight when Jack finally closed his laptop and went back out to check on Copper. She was lying down in the straw, resting but alert. When Jack entered the barn, her ears swiveled toward him. "We'll find her," Jack said quietly, "however long it takes. I promise you that." The mare's eyes reflected the lamplight, watching him steadily. And for the first time in 3 years, Jack Hartley felt like he had a reason to wake up in the morning. The first week with Copper established a rhythm that Jack hadn't experienced since his military days. Up at dawn to check on her, give her the first small feeding of hay, monitor her water intake, check the healing wounds, apply medication to the raw spots where the chain had rubbed. Then breakfast for himself, though he found he was eating better too, keeping up his strength so he could keep up with the work. Rebecca stopped by every other day, checking Copper's progress, adjusting the feeding plan as the mare's digestive system slowly recovered. By the end of the first week, Copper had gained maybe 20 pounds. Not much, but it was something. More importantly, her eyes had changed. That defeated, hollow look was fading, replaced by something closer to curiosity. She began to whinny when Jack approached the barn, started investigating her surroundings with more interest. One morning, Jack found her trying to scratch her face on the barn door, and the sight made him smile. It was such a normal horse-like thing to do, a sign of returning health and comfort. "You're getting your personality back," Jack told her, running his hand down her neck. Her coat was still rough, but under the careful grooming Jack did twice a day, it was starting to show hints of shine. The grooming sessions became meditative. Jack would work the brush in slow, rhythmic strokes, while talking to Copper about whatever came to mind. Sometimes about Sarah, memories he'd kept locked away. Sometimes about Emma, about the regrets that sat heavy in his chest. Sometimes about Thomas and Lily, wondering out loud where the girl might be, what she might be doing right now. It was during one of these grooming sessions, about 10 days after he'd found her, that Jack discovered something tangled in Copper's mane. At first, he thought it was just another burr or piece of debris, but when he worked it free carefully, he realized it was something else entirely. A locket. Silver, tarnished but intact, on a delicate chain that had twisted through the coarse hair of Copper's mane so thoroughly it had become almost invisible. Jack's hands trembled slightly as he held it. The locket was small, oval-shaped, with a simple engraved pattern on the front. He opened it carefully, the tiny hinge stiff from years of neglect. Inside were 2 photos, so small they were barely larger than thumbnails. One showed Thomas Mercer, younger than in the other photo, smiling at the camera. The other showed Lily, probably around 7 or 8 years old, gap-toothed grin, those same blonde braids. Jack had to sit down. He lowered himself onto a hay bale, the locket cradled in his palm, like something sacred. This wasn't something that had accidentally gotten caught in Copper's mane. Someone had placed it there deliberately, and there was only one person who would have done that. Lily. She must have put it there before they were separated. A message, a talisman, a way of keeping her family close to the horse she was losing. The chain had worked itself deeper into the mane over time, hidden but there, waiting to be found. Jack thought about what that moment must have been like. A little girl, maybe 9 years old, already grieving the loss of her mother, now losing her grandfather to a disease that stole him away piece by piece. Knowing she was about to lose Copper too, being sent to live with an aunt she barely knew. Taking off her most precious possession, the locket with pictures of the 2 people she loved most, and placing it around her horse's neck. "Don't forget me," she might have whispered. "I'll come back for you. I promise." But she never did, or couldn't. And Copper had worn that locket for years, a secret bond that no one knew about until now. Jack closed his fist around the locket and felt something crack open inside his chest. This wasn't just about keeping Thomas's promise anymore. This was about a little girl who'd been ripped away from everything she loved, who'd tried so hard to leave a piece of herself behind, who probably spent years wondering what happened to her horse, if Copper remembered her, if anyone would ever understand what they'd meant to each other. He stood and walked to Copper, holding out the locket. "She didn't forget you," he said, his voice rough. "Lily didn't forget. She left you her most precious thing. She loved you that much." The mare lowered her head, and Jack could swear she understood. Maybe not the words, but the emotion behind them. The weight of what this small piece of silver meant. That evening, Jack called Rebecca and told her about the locket. She was quiet for a long moment after he finished. "Jack, that changes things. How?" "It proves the bond was real, deep. If you can find Lily, if you can show her this, show her that Copper kept it all these years, that you found it and understood what it meant." Rebecca paused. "That's not just returning a horse. That's returning hope." Jack intensified his search. He contacted the county records office in Laramie County, Wyoming, requesting any information about Thomas Mercer's estate. They sent him copies of the probate records, which showed that Catherine Walsh had been listed as Lily's guardian. The address on file was in Laramie, not Montana. That was odd, given Thomas's journal entries about Catherine living in Montana. He tried searching for Catherine Walsh in Wyoming first. Found 3 possibilities, called them all. Wrong person. Wrong person. Disconnected number. Then he expanded the search to Montana, as Thomas had written. There were dozens of Catherine Walshes. Jack methodically worked through them, making calls, sending carefully worded emails. Most went unanswered. A few responded, confused about why a stranger was contacting them. None had any connection to the Mercer family. It was frustrating, exhausting work, but Jack had spent years doing intelligence gathering in far more hostile circumstances. He knew patience was as important as persistence. He tried a different approach. School records. If Lily had been 9 in 2021 when Thomas went into care, she'd be 13 now, 7th or 8th grade. But accessing school records required parental permission or legal standing, neither of which Jack had. He hit a wall of privacy laws designed to protect children, which he understood but found maddening in this circumstance. Deputy Martinez checked in during the 2nd week, stopping by to see how Copper was doing. She was impressed with the mare's progress and with Jack's dedication. "Any luck finding the girl?" she asked. "Dead ends so far. The aunt, Catherine Walsh, seems to have vanished. No current address, no phone number that works. Martinez was quiet for a moment, watching Copper graze in the small paddock Jack had fenced off. "Go. You could try foster care records. If the aunt couldn't take her, or if something happened, the girl might have ended up in the system." The thought made Jack's stomach clench. Lily in foster care bounced from home to home, losing not just her family, but any sense of stability. It happened all the time. Kids fell through cracks in the system, especially kids dealing with trauma and grief. "How would I access those records?" "You wouldn't. Not directly. Privacy laws again. But if you had reason to believe the child was in danger, or that you had information relevant to her welfare, you could contact Child Services. They might not tell you where she is, but they could potentially pass along information. It wasn't much, but it was something." Jack thanked her and added it to his list of options. That night, unable to sleep, Jack found himself looking through Thomas's journal again. He'd read it so many times he practically had it memorized, but sometimes details revealed themselves on repeated examination. One entry caught his attention, one he'd skimmed past before, because it seemed like routine ranch business. Thomas had written about taking Lily to a 4-H meeting, how proud he was that she'd joined, how good it was for her to be around other kids who loved horses and animals. 4-H. That was an organization with records, with adult leaders who might remember a little girl and her special bond with a chestnut mare. It was a long shot, but Jack had learned that investigations were built on long shots that occasionally paid off. He spent the next morning researching 4-H chapters in Laramie County, Wyoming, found contact information for the county extension office, left a message explaining that he was trying to locate information about a former member, Lily Mercer, for a family matter. The woman who called him back was named Patricia, and she remembered Lily immediately. "Oh, that sweet girl. Yes, she was with us for about a year before her grandfather got sick. She and her horse, Copper, they were inseparable. Best pair I ever saw in the horsemanship program." Patricia's voice grew sad. "I heard Thomas passed. I always wondered what happened to Lily. She just stopped coming to meetings. We tried to reach out, but nobody ever called back. Do you know anything about where she went?" "Her aunt, Catherine Walsh?" "I'm sorry, I don't. We sent mail to the ranch address, but it came back undeliverable. That was 4 years ago now. I'm afraid that's all I know." Another dead end. But at least Jack had confirmation that the bond between Lily and Copper had been real strong, noticed by others. It wasn't just a grandfather's biased observation. 3 weeks into Copper's recovery, Jack drove back to the abandoned truck site. He'd been thinking about it, wondering if he'd missed something in his initial search. Sometimes you had to go back to the beginning, look at the evidence with fresh eyes after you knew more of the story. The truck was still there, though someone had spray-painted an orange X on the door, probably marking it for eventual removal. Jack parked and approached it with the same careful attention he'd used the first time. He'd already searched the cab thoroughly, but he hadn't fully investigated the glove compartment. It had been hanging open, seemingly empty, but Jack had learned long ago that empty rarely meant empty. There were always spaces behind spaces, places things could hide. He reached in through the broken window and felt around the back of the compartment cavity. His fingers touched something. Not paper, something harder. Metal. He worked it free carefully and pulled it out into the light. A small cardboard box, military green, the kind used to present medals. Jack's heart rate picked up as he opened it. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, was a Purple Heart. The medal gleamed dully in the morning sun, the gold-bordered Purple Heart with Washington's profile unmistakable. Jack turned the box over and found an inscription on the back. Corporal Thomas J. Mercer, USMC, Vietnam, 1970. Jack stood there holding the box, feeling the weight of it in his hand. Thomas Mercer had been a Marine. He'd served in Vietnam, been wounded, received this honor. And like Jack, he'd come home and built a life after war. Raised a family, worked a ranch, tried to do right by the people who depended on him. The connection Jack felt to Thomas deepened in that moment. They were brothers in a way civilians could never fully understand. Both had answered the call, both had sacrificed, both had carried invisible wounds alongside the visible ones. Both had struggled with what came after, when the mission ended, and you had to figure out how to be a regular person again. Jack thought about the journal entries, about Thomas's determination to keep his promise, even as his mind betrayed him. That was a Marine. Semper Fi, always faithful. Even when everything else failed, you kept faith with your word. He tucked the Purple Heart carefully into his jacket pocket and continued searching the truck. This time he moved more slowly, more thoroughly. Behind the seat, he found some old maps of Wyoming, coffee-stained and torn. In the door pocket, a handful of loose change and a grocery receipt from 2020. Nothing that helped him find Lily. But the Purple Heart changed something. Jack had been approaching this as a civilian trying to solve a problem. Now he understood it differently. This was a veteran's unfinished mission, and Jack was honor-bound to complete it. Not just for Lily, not just for Copper, but for Thomas. For a fellow soldier who'd given everything he had and died with his final objective unachieved. When Jack got home, he made a decision. He'd been avoiding it, worried about seeming foolish or too invested. But Thomas's service record gave him an angle he hadn't considered before. He contacted the Veterans of Foreign Wars chapter in Laramie County, Wyoming. Explained that he was a retired serviceman trying to locate information about a fellow veteran's family. He mentioned Thomas's name, his service, his Purple Heart. The man who answered, a Vietnam veteran named Robert, who'd known Thomas casually, was sympathetic but couldn't offer much. Thomas had attended a few meetings after he retired, but hadn't been very social. Kept to himself mostly, focused on his ranch and his granddaughter. "I remember him talking about the girl once," Robert said. Proud as could be. Said she was all he had left. This would have been maybe 2018 or so. He mentioned a sister-in-law, said if anything happened to him, she'd take care of Lily. I think her name was Catherine. She lived in Montana somewhere, I'm pretty sure, he said. Do you remember where in Montana? No, sorry, just Montana. Big state. Did he ever mention anything else about her? Where she worked, what town? Robert was quiet, thinking. Wait, there was something. He said she worked at a hospital, or maybe it was a nursing home. Some kind of medical facility? He mentioned it because he was worried about Lily being around sick people all the time. But Catherine assured him the girl wouldn't be exposed to anything dangerous. A medical facility in Montana. It wasn't much, but it was more than Jack had before. Robert, thank you. This helps. You trying to find the girl? I am. Her grandfather made a promise before he died. I'm trying to keep it for him. Semper Fi, brother. Semper Fi. Jack hung up and immediately opened his laptop. Montana had dozens of hospitals, nursing homes, and medical facilities. But Jack now had a specific search parameter. Catherine Walsh, working in healthcare somewhere in Montana, around 2019 to 2021. He started with the larger cities. Billings, Missoula, Great Falls, Bozeman. Called Hospital Human Resources Departments, explaining he was trying to locate a former colleague for a family matter. Most couldn't or wouldn't help due to privacy policies. A few took his information and said they'd pass it along if anyone by that name worked there. Jack moved on to nursing homes and care facilities. The search was tedious, methodical. He made spreadsheets tracking every facility he contacted, every dead end, every possible lead. It was the kind of detailed intelligence work he'd done in the military, except instead of tracking enemy movements, he was tracking one woman who might hold the key to finding Lily. Rebecca stopped by that afternoon and found him at his kitchen table, surrounded by papers and printouts, phone pressed to his ear. She waited until he finished the call, then set down a bag of groceries she'd brought. "You're not taking care of yourself." "I'm fine." "Jack, when's the last time you ate something besides coffee and whatever's easiest to grab?" He couldn't remember. Copper's doing better. That's what matters. Copper's doing better because you're taking excellent care of her. But you can't pour from an empty cup. Let me make you lunch while you keep searching. While Rebecca cooked, she asked about his progress. Jack showed her the Purple Heart, explained the VFW connection, the lead about Catherine working in healthcare. "That's good," Rebecca said. "You're getting closer. I can feel it, or I'm chasing shadows. It's been almost a month. The trail is 4 years cold. Maybe Catherine moved out of state. Maybe she changed careers. Maybe Lily's not with her anymore. Or maybe you're about to find them. Rebecca set a sandwich in front of him. Eat, then call Emma. What? Your daughter, call her. Tell her about this. Let her in. Jack looked at the sandwich, at Rebecca's determined expression, at his phone sitting on the table. Why? Because you're doing something remarkable here and she should know about it. Because this journey is changing you and she should see that. Because Sarah asked you to reconnect with her and this is your chance. Rebecca's voice softened. And because you're going to find Lily. And when you do, when you see that reunion happen, it's going to break your heart open. You're going to need people who love you. Let Emma be one of them. After Rebecca left, Jack stared at his phone for a long time. Finally, he picked it up and called his daughter. Emma answered on the fourth ring. Dad, is everything okay? I'm fine. I just wanted to talk to you about something. There was a pause. They didn't do this. They didn't call just to talk. Okay, Jack told her the story, all of it. Finding copper chained to the truck, Thomas's journal, the promise to Lily, the search that had consumed the last month. He talked more in that conversation than he had in their previous 10 conversations combined. Emma was quiet for a long time after he finished. Dad, that's incredible. That you're doing this. It's the right thing to do. It's more than that. It's compassionate. It's committed. It's the kind of thing I always wished you'd done more of when I was growing up. Being present. Caring about something besides the next mission. The words stung because they were true. Emma, I'm sorry. For all the times I wasn't there. For choosing the military over you and your mom. For the distance between us. I know, Dad. I've known for a long time. And I'm working on forgiving it. This what you're doing now, it helps me understand you better. I'd like you to meet Copper. And when we find Lily, I'd like you to be there. I'd like that too. After they hung up, Jack felt lighter somehow. He returned to his search with renewed energy. 3 hours later, he found it. A small care facility in Missoula called Riverside Senior Living. Catherine Walsh had worked there as a nurse from 2018 to 2023. The administrator confirmed it, but said Catherine no longer worked there. Do you have a forwarding address? I'm sorry we can't release that information, but Jack was getting closer. He could feel it. Jack drove to Missoula on a cold October morning. The 3-hour drive gave him time to think, to plan his approach. He couldn't just show up at Riverside Senior Living, demanding information. He needed to be smart about this, respectful of privacy laws while still making progress. Copper had been with him for 5 weeks now. She'd gained nearly 80 pounds. Her coat had a healthy shine, and her personality had fully emerged. She was gentle, intelligent, and affectionate. Every day Jack spent with her, he understood more deeply why Lily had loved her so much. That morning before he left, Jack had been grooming Copper when his brush caught on something else in her mane. For a moment he thought it was another burr, but when he worked it free, his breath caught. It was tangled with the locket chain, so deeply embedded in the coarse hair that he'd missed it during previous grooming sessions. The locket itself had been obvious once freed, but this had been hidden beneath it, wrapped around the same strands of mane. A small braid of blonde hair, tied at both ends with faded pink thread, Lily's hair. She must have cut a piece of her own braid and woven it into Copper's mane. Another talisman, another piece of herself left behind. Jack held it carefully, this intimate artifact of a little girl's love and desperation. He'd placed it in a small plastic bag, along with the locket, keeping them safe. These weren't just clues anymore. They were sacred objects, proof of a bond that had survived years of separation. Now, as Jack pulled into Missoula, he felt the weight of those artifacts in his jacket pocket. Physical evidence of everything he was trying to make right. Riverside Senior Living was a pleasant, single-story facility on the outskirts of town, well-maintained, with landscaped gardens. Jack parked and sat for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he walked inside. The receptionist was a young woman with kind eyes. Jack had learned that you caught more flies with honey than vinegar, so he smiled and spoke politely. Good morning. I'm hoping you can help me with something. I'm trying to locate a former employee, Catherine Walsh. She worked here as a nurse until last year. I'm sorry, we can't give out information about former employees. I understand. The thing is, Catherine's my sister-in-law's sister. We lost touch after my sister-in-law passed, and I'm trying to reconnect with the family. The lie came easily, though it left a bad taste. But sometimes you had to bend the truth to serve a greater good. The receptionist's expression softened. I'm sorry for your loss, but I still can't give out personal information. Could you at least tell me if anyone here knew her well? Someone who might remember her, who I could talk to? She hesitated, then nodded. Let me check if Denise is available. She was the head nurse when Catherine worked here. No promises, but she might be willing to talk to you. Denise turned out to be a woman in her 50s with grey hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She met Jack in the facility's small coffee area, studying him with sharp eyes. Mary said, "You're asking about Catherine Walsh?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to locate her for a family matter." "What kind of family matter?" Jack decided on partial truth. Her brother-in-law, Thomas Mercer, passed away 4 years ago. Before he died, he made a promise regarding his granddaughter, Lily. I'm trying to help fulfill that promise. I need to find Lily, and I believe Catherine might know where she is. Denise's expression shifted, sadness crossing her face. Catherine passed away 2 years ago. Car accident on Highway 93. It was very sudden. The words hit Jack like a physical blow. Catherine was dead. The one person who'd been responsible for Lily, the connection between Thomas and his granddaughter, gone. "What about Lily?" Jack asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "The little girl. What happened to her?" Denise shook her head. Catherine talked about her niece sometimes. The girl had a lot of problems, behavioral issues, trouble adjusting. Catherine was struggling to cope. She mentioned social services might need to get involved, but I don't know if that ever happened. After Catherine died, I don't know what became of the girl. Do you remember where Catherine lived? Maybe there are records, neighbors who might know. She had an apartment on the south side. I went there once for a birthday party she threw for the staff. Denise wrote down an address on a napkin. But that was 2 years ago. I doubt anyone's still there. Jack took the napkin, his hand steady despite the turmoil in his chest. "Thank you. This helps. I hope you find her. The girl, I mean." Catherine worried about her constantly. It weighed on her. Jack drove to the address Denise had given him. The apartment building was old but maintained, a 2-story structure with exterior stairs. Catherine's unit had been on the 2nd floor, number 204. A different name was on the mailbox now. Jack knocked anyway, but no one answered. He tried the apartment manager's office on the ground floor. The manager was a heavy-set man in his 60s who remembered Catherine. Terrible thing, that accident. Nice lady, worked too many hours. She had a kid living with her, some relative. Quiet girl, kept to herself. Do you know what happened to the girl after Catherine died? Social services came and got her. I felt bad for the kid. Lost her aunt. Had to leave whatever life she'd built here. They took her stuff, cleaned out the apartment. Donated most of it, I think. Is there anything left? Anything in storage? The manager scratched his chin. Funny you should ask. There's a few boxes in the basement storage. Catherine was behind on rent before she died, and we kept some stuff in case family came to settle up. Nobody ever did. I was going to donate it eventually, just never got around to it. Could I look through it? I'm trying to help the girl. Her grandfather left her something, and I'm trying to get it to her. The manager studied Jack for a long moment, then shrugged. Sure, it's just collecting dust anyway. The basement was dim and musty. The manager led Jack to a wire cage storage unit containing 4 cardboard boxes, all labeled Walsh 204. Take your time. Lock up when you're done. The door will catch. Jack pulled the boxes out into better light and began going through them systematically. Most of it was ordinary household items, kitchen things, books, some clothing. But in the 3rd box he found paperwork, bills, medical records, tax documents. And there, in a manila folder, documents from Montana Child and Family Services. Jack's hands trembled as he read through them. Lily Mercer, age 11 at the time, placed in emergency foster care following the death of her guardian, Catherine Walsh. Temporary placement with a family named Henderson in Helena. Caseworker assigned, Maria Santos Helena. Lily had been in Helena 2 years ago. Was she still there? Still with the Hendersons? Or had she been moved again, lost in the system's endless shuffling? Jack took photos of every relevant document with his phone. There were also some personal papers. Letters from Lily to Catherine, written in a child's careful handwriting. Dear Aunt Kathy, I miss Grandpa Tom and I miss Copper so much. When can we go get Copper? You promised we would when we got settled. Please, can we get her soon? Love, Lily. Another letter dated 6 months later. Dear Aunt Kathy, I had a bad dream about Copper again. I dreamed she was alone and scared and looking for me. Are you sure she's okay? Can we at least go visit her? I miss her so much it hurts. Jack had to stop reading. The pain in those letters, the desperate hope, the gradual acceptance that Copper wasn't coming. It was unbearable. There was one more letter, dated just a month before Catherine's death. The handwriting was messier, the tone different. I don't care anymore about anything. You said we'd get Copper and we never did. You said things would be better, and they're not. I hate it here. I hate school. I hate everything. Copper probably forgot about me anyway. Everything forgets about me eventually. The letter from a child sliding into despair, giving up hope. Jack folded it carefully and added it to the photos on his phone. In the bottom of the box he found one more thing. A business card from Maria Santos, CFSP caseworker, with a Helena office address and phone number. Jack pulled out his phone and took a photo of the card. Then he repacked the boxes, locked the storage unit and headed back to his truck. He sat in the parking lot for a long time, holding the plastic bag with the locket and the braid of hair. Lily had been 11 when she wrote that last letter. She'd be 13 now. 2 more years of loss, of instability, of believing that everyone and everything she loved had abandoned her. But Copper hadn't forgotten, and Jack was going to make sure Lily knew that. He started the truck and headed for Helena. Helena was an hour and a half from Missoula. Jack called Rebecca from the road, told her he'd found a lead and might not be back until late. She promised to check on Copper and told him to be careful. You're close now, Jack. I can hear it in your voice. I just hope I'm not too late. That she's still with this Henderson family, that they're good people, that she hasn't been moved again. One step at a time. And the caseworker first. The Child and Family Services office was in a nondescript building downtown. Jack arrived just after 3 in the afternoon and asked for Maria Santos at the reception desk. Do you have an appointment? No, but I have information about one of her cases. Lily Mercer. The receptionist made a call, spoke quietly, then nodded at Jack. She'll see you. 3rd door on the left. Maria Santos was a woman in her 40s, with warm brown eyes and an air of competence tempered by compassion. She gestured for Jack to sit. You said you have information about Lily Mercer. Jack laid it out carefully. Who he was, how he'd found Copper, Thomas's journal, the promise that had gone unfulfilled. He showed her photos of the journal entries, the pictures of Lily and Copper together, the locket and braid of hair he'd found in the mare's mane. Maria listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from professional neutrality to genuine emotion as the story unfolded. Mr. Hartley, this is extraordinary, but you understand I can't just tell you where Lily is. There are privacy laws, protocols. I understand. I'm not asking you to violate those. I'm asking you to help me help this girl. Her grandfather made a promise. He wanted Copper to go to Lily. I've brought that horse back from the edge of death. She's healthy now, beautiful, ready to be reunited with the girl who loves her. I'm asking you to facilitate that, to see if it's possible, if it's in Lily's best interest. Maria was quiet for a long moment, looking at the photos on Jack's phone, at the locket he'd laid on her desk. Lily has been through significant trauma. She's currently placed with a foster family here in Helena, the Hendersons. Good people, but she's struggled. Behavioral issues, trust problems, emotional withdrawal. She's been with them for 18 months now, the longest placement she's had. She's still in Helena then. Still with the same family? Yes. But Mr. Hartley, I need to be clear. Reuniting her with a horse, even one she loved years ago, isn't a simple matter. The Hendersons would have to consent. We'd have to ensure it wouldn't be traumatizing for Lily, and legally, the horse would need proper documentation of ownership. I have Thomas's journal documenting his ownership. I have the registration showing his name. I can get a lawyer if needed to establish legal standing. Maria nodded slowly. Let me talk to the Hendersons. Let me explain the situation. If they're open to it, if they think it might help Lily rather than hurt her, then we can explore next steps. But I make no promises. That's all I'm asking. A chance. Give me your contact information. I'll be in touch within the week. Jack left the office feeling both hopeful and anxious. He'd come so close. Lily was here in Helena, just miles away. But there were still barriers, still protocols, still the possibility that she might not want to see Copper after all this time. He drove back toward Bozeman as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple. His phone rang when he was halfway home. Emma. Dad, how did it go? He'd texted her earlier, told her he was pursuing a lead. Now he filled her in on the details. Emma listened, then said something that surprised him. Dad, I'm coming to Montana. This weekend, I want to be there when you find her. Emma, you don't have to do that. I want to. This matters to you, so it matters to me. And honestly, I think I need to see this through with you. It's bringing us together in a way nothing else has. I'm not missing that. Jack felt his throat tighten. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. I'll fly into Bozeman Friday night. We can spend Saturday with Copper, and then whatever happens next, we'll handle it together. After they hung up, Jack realized he was smiling. Really smiling. Not the polite expression he'd been wearing for years, but genuine happiness. Sarah would have loved this. Would have loved seeing him and Emma reconnecting. Would have loved the story of Copper and Lily. Would have been proud of him for not giving up. He drove home through the darkness, the mountains standing like sentinels against the star-filled sky. And for the first time in 3 years, Jack Hartley felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. Maria Santos called 3 days later. Jack was in the barn with Copper when his phone rang, and his heart jumped at seeing the Helena area code. Mr. Hartley, I've spoken with the Henderson family. They're cautiously interested. They've seen Lily struggle with depression and withdrawal, and they're willing to try anything that might help her. But there's something you need to know. Jack's hand tightened on the phone. What is it? Lily isn't the same little girl from those photographs. She's 13 now, been in the system for 2 years. She's been in 3 different foster homes before the Hendersons. Each placement failed because of behavioral issues. She's angry, defensive, refuses to connect with people. The Hendersons are patient, experienced foster parents, but even they're struggling. Has anyone told her about Copper? That the horse is alive, that I'm trying to find her? No. We wanted to talk to you first. Mr. Hartley, there's a real possibility that Lily has closed that door emotionally, that bringing up the horse will cause more pain than healing. Children in trauma sometimes wall off the things they loved because loving means losing, and they can't bear to lose again. Jack thought about the letters he'd found, particularly the last one. I don't care anymore. Everything forgets about me eventually. I understand the risk, Jack said. But Maria, this horse didn't forget her. Copper wore Lily's locket and a braid of her hair for years. That bond was real, deep. If there's any chance it can help Lily, don't we owe it to her to try? Maria was quiet for a moment. The Hendersons have agreed to meet with you. They want to hear the story directly, see the evidence you have, meet Copper if possible. If they're convinced it's genuine and might help Lily, they'll consider how to proceed. Can you come to Helena this Saturday? Yes, my daughter Emma will be with me. Good. Sometimes having another witness, another voice helps. I'll set up a meeting at the Hendersons' home, Saturday at 10. Mr. Hartley, I want you to prepare yourself. Lily may reject this. She may refuse to see the horse, refuse to engage at all. She's built walls to protect herself, and those walls don't come down easily. I understand. And there's one more thing you should know. In Catherine's files, there was a note from Lily's previous therapist. Lily told the therapist that everyone she loves dies or leaves her. Her mother, her grandfather, her aunt. She said she loved Copper more than anything, and Copper disappeared too. She believes the horse is dead. She's mourned her. The words landed like a blow. Lily thought Copper was dead, had spent 2 years believing that the one constant in her young life was gone forever. "Then we need to show her the truth," Jack said. "We need to show her that Copper is alive, that she never stopped being loved, that someone kept trying to honor the promise her grandfather made." After the call ended, Jack stood in the barn with Copper, running his hand along her neck. The mare had filled out beautifully in the 2 months since he'd found her. Her coat gleamed, her eyes were bright and alert, her movements graceful. She was a different horse from the broken, starving creature chained to that truck. "Saturday," he told Copper. "Saturday we might find her. Are you ready?" The mare nickered softly, pushing her nose into his chest. Jack wrapped his arms around her neck and let himself feel the weight of what was coming. The possibility of reunion, of healing, of a promise kept. But also the possibility of rejection, of a girl too hurt to accept what he was offering, of a mission that might fail despite his best efforts. He thought about Thomas Mercer, the Marine who'd fought in Vietnam and come home to build a life, who'd loved his granddaughter so fiercely that even as his mind crumbled, he remembered his promise, who died believing he'd failed. "I won't fail," Jack whispered. "I'll keep your promise, Thomas. Whatever it takes." Friday evening, Jack picked Emma up at the Bozeman airport. She hugged him tight, longer than she had in years, and when she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. "I'm proud of you, Dad. I haven't done anything yet." "Yes, you have. You cared enough to try. That's everything." They drove back to the cabin in comfortable silence. Emma wanted to meet Copper immediately, even though it was late. In the barn, with the light from a single lantern casting warm shadows, Emma stood very still as the mare approached her. "Dad, she's beautiful. She is now. You should have seen her when I found her." Emma ran her hand along Copper's neck, and the mare leaned into the touch. "Lily's lucky to have someone fighting for her like this. I wish I'd had that when I was young. I'm sorry I wasn't there the way I should have been. I know, Dad, but you're here now. That counts for something." Saturday morning arrived clear and cold, the first real bite of winter in the air. Jack and Emma left early for Helena, Copper loaded carefully in the borrowed trailer. Rebecca had offered to come along for support, but Jack had declined. This felt like something he and Emma needed to do together. They'd spent the previous evening preparing. Jack had organized all the artifacts into a presentation folder. Thomas's journal, the photographs, the letters from Lily to Catherine, copies of the ownership documents. He'd cleaned and polished the locket until it shone. The braid of blonde hair was sealed in a clear plastic sleeve, protected but visible. Emma had helped him write out a timeline, making the story clearer and easier to follow. She'd also made him rehearse what he wanted to say, editing out the parts where he got too emotional or too detailed. "Keep it simple, Dad. Let the evidence speak for itself. You're not trying to convince them of anything except that this is real, that you're sincere, and that you want what's best for Lily." Now, driving north, with the morning sun breaking over the mountains, Jack felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment. 2 months since he'd pulled over on that highway and seen a chained horse. 2 months of healing, searching, hoping. It all came down to the next few hours. "You nervous?" Emma asked. "Terrified." "Good. That means it matters." The Henderson home was in a quiet neighborhood on Helena's west side. A modest ranch house with a well-kept yard and a swing set in the back. Jack parked on the street, leaving the trailer with Copper for now. Maria Santos was already there, her car in the driveway. Mark and Susan Henderson met them at the door. Mark was a tall man in his 50s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Susan was shorter, with gray-streaked hair and a warm but cautious smile. They led Jack and Emma into a living room that was comfortable and lived in, with photos on the walls showing various children at different ages. Foster children, Jack realized. Kids who'd passed through this home, some briefly, some longer. Maria made introductions, and they all sat. Jack noticed a closed door down the hall. Lily's room, probably. Was she in there now, listening? Or had the Hendersons sent her elsewhere for this meeting? "Lily's at a friend's house," Susan said, as if reading his mind. "We thought it best to talk to you first, hear the full story, before we decide how to proceed." Jack nodded and began. He told them everything, starting with that morning on the highway. He spoke clearly and simply. the way Emma had taught him, letting the story unfold naturally. When he reached the part about finding the journal, he passed it to them. They read selected entries, and he saw Susan's eyes fill with tears. He showed them the photographs. The one of little Lily sitting on Copper radiating joy. The one of Thomas and Katie. He showed them the locket, explained how he'd found it tangled in Copper's mane. This wasn't just a girl who liked horses, Jack said. This was a bond that defined both of them. Lily put her most precious possession on Copper before they were separated. She left a piece of herself behind, and Copper kept it all these years. He showed them the braid of hair, and Susan actually gasped. She cut her own hair? Yes, ma'am. Wove it into the mane so deep I didn't find it until weeks later. She wanted Copper to have a part of her, to remember. Mark looked at the evidence spread across the coffee table, then at Jack. Mr. Hartley, this is remarkable, but you need to understand what we're dealing with. Lily is deeply traumatized. She doesn't trust adults. She doesn't connect with her peers. She's failing school, despite being clearly intelligent. She has nightmares, panic attacks, periods of complete withdrawal, where she won't speak for days. Has she ever talked about Copper? About horses? Susan and Mark exchanged glances. Susan spoke carefully. When she first came to us, she had one possession, a stuffed horse, worn almost threadbare. She slept with it every night. Then about 6 months ago, she threw it away. Said she was too old for kid stuff, but I think it was more than that. I think she was trying to stop caring about anything that could hurt her. Does she still dream about horses? Jack asked. Susan nodded slowly. She wakes up sometimes crying, saying a name, Copper. We didn't know what it meant until Maria explained. Jack felt his chest tighten. After everything, after all the loss and pain, Lily still dreamed about her horse. Still carried that love somewhere inside her, even if she'd tried to bury it. I'd like you to meet Copper, Jack said. Before you decide anything, come see what Lily loved. See what's been waiting for her. They walked outside together, the group moving quietly to where the trailer was parked. Jack opened the door and backed Copper out carefully. The mare stepped down with grace, her hooves solid on the pavement. She looked around with alert curiosity, ears forward, taking in the new surroundings. Susan's hand went to her mouth. Oh my! She's stunning. Copper was stunning. Her chestnut coat gleamed in the morning light, muscles moving smoothly under healthy flesh. Her mane and tail had been brushed until they shone. But it was more than physical beauty. There was intelligence in her eyes, gentleness in the way she stood calmly despite being in an unfamiliar place. Mark approached slowly, extending his hand for Copper to sniff. The mare investigated him briefly, then allowed him to stroke her neck. You've done incredible work with her, Mr. Hartley. She's clearly well cared for. She deserves it. And please call me Jack. Jack, then. Mark looked at his wife, some unspoken communication passing between them. Susan? Susan was crying quietly, still watching Copper. That little girl loved this horse so much. She talked about her constantly those first few months. Told us stories about riding her, about sleeping in the barn with her when she was sad, about how Copper always knew when she needed comfort. She wiped her eyes. Then she stopped talking about her, completely, like she'd never existed. Because it hurt too much to remember, Emma said softly. It was the first time she'd spoken since they'd arrived. I understand that. Sometimes you have to forget the things you love just to survive losing them. Jack looked at his daughter, seeing his own failures reflected in her understanding of Lily's pain. Maria stepped closer to Copper, professional assessment in her gaze. The question is whether bringing Copper back into Lily's life will help her heal or traumatize her further. She's built walls for self-protection. This could break through those walls in a positive way, or it could shatter her. There's only one way to find out, Mark said. We need to tell Lily, give her the choice. Susan nodded slowly, but carefully. We can't just spring this on her. She needs to be prepared, needs to understand what's happening. Jack handed Mark the folder with all the artifacts. These belong to her. Whatever she decides about Copper, she should have these. They're her grandfather's words, her mother's picture, proof that she was loved even when she felt abandoned. Mark took the folder with reverence. We'll talk to her today. Show her these. Tell her about you and what you've done. Then we'll see how she responds. Maria will help us navigate it professionally, and if she says no, Jack forced himself to ask the question. If she doesn't want to see Copper, then we respect that, Maria said firmly. But Jack, I don't think she'll say no. I think she's been waiting for this, hoping for it, even if she doesn't know it yet. They talked logistics. If Lily agreed, where should the meeting happen? The Hendersons had a friend with a small horse facility on the edge of town, neutral ground where Lily might feel less pressured. Maria would be there, the Hendersons would be there, and Jack if Lily agreed to meet him. What about me? Emma asked. Should I stay away? Susan considered, then shook her head. Actually, it might help. You're close to her age, relatively speaking. Not an authority figure. Maybe less intimidating. They loaded Copper back into the trailer. As Jack closed the door, Mark touched his arm. Whatever happens, you should know you've done something remarkable here. You've given us hope for Lily when we were starting to run out of it. Thank you. Driving back to Bozeman, Emma was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, Dad, what if this doesn't work? What if she can't accept it? Then at least we tried. At least she'll know someone cared enough to keep looking, to honor a promise made by the grandfather she loved. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just knowing you weren't forgotten is what saves you. Emma reached over and squeezed his hand. Is that what this is really about, being remembered, not forgotten? Jack thought about Sarah's final words, about the 3 years he'd spent in isolation, about the distance between him and Emma that he'd never known how to bridge. Maybe, he admitted, maybe that's exactly what it's about. Sunday passed in agonizing silence. No call from the Hendersons, no word from Maria. Jack tried to stay busy, working with Copper, cleaning the barn, fixing a fence that didn't really need fixing. Emma helped, not saying much, just being present. Her flight back to Seattle wasn't until Tuesday morning. She'd extended her stay, wanting to see this through. Monday afternoon, Maria finally called. Jack, the Hendersons talked to Lily yesterday. They showed her everything. The journal, the photos, the locket. Maria paused, and Jack's heart hammered in his chest. She locked herself in her room for 4 hours. Wouldn't come out, wouldn't talk to anyone. Jack closed his eyes. She said no. Actually, that's not what happened. This morning, she came out of her room and asked if the horse was real, if Copper was really alive. Susan showed her pictures you'd sent, pictures of Copper, healthy and beautiful. Lily stared at them for a long time. Then she asked one question. What question? She asked if Copper still remembered her. The words hit Jack hard. After everything, after all the loss and pain, that's what Lily needed to know. Not if she could have the horse back, not if someone was trying to help her. Just whether she was still remembered, still loved by the one constant thing in her broken young life. What did they tell her? Susan told her about the locket, about how you found it in Copper's mane, how it had been there all these years, about the braid of hair, about how Copper had worn Lily's love around her neck like a talisman. Maria's voice grew thick. Lily cried. First time the Hendersons have seen her really cry since she came to them. Not angry tears, not frustrated tears. Grief tears, healing tears. Does she want to see Copper? She's terrified. Terrified it's not real. Terrified it won't be the same. Terrified she'll lose Copper all over again. But yes, she wants to see her. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, at the Morgan Equestrian Center. It's a small facility owned by friends of the Hendersons. Private, quiet. Just you, Emma, me, the Hendersons, and Lily. After the call ended, Jack sat down heavily. Emma found him on the back deck, staring at the mountains. She said yes, he told her. Emma sat beside him. Then why do you look so worried? Because what if it doesn't work? What if Copper doesn't remember her? What if Lily sees the horse and realizes too much time has passed, too much has changed? What if I've built this all up in my head and the reality is just disappointment? Dad, you've done everything right. You saved Copper's life. You tracked down Lily against impossible odds. You've honored a promise a dying man made. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already succeeded. But what if it's not enough to save her? Emma was quiet for a moment. You can't save everyone, Dad. I learned that the hard way growing up without you. You were always trying to save the world, one mission at a time. and you couldn't save our family in the process. But this is different. You're not trying to save Lily because it's your job or your duty. You're doing it because you care. That matters more than you know. That evening, Jack wrote a letter. He sat at his kitchen table with a pen and paper, something he hadn't done in years, and wrote in his careful script. Dear Lily, my name is Jack Hartley. I'm a veteran like your grandfather. I found Copper on a September morning chained to an abandoned truck, starving and alone. In that truck, I found your grandfather's journal. I read about his love for you, about his promise to make sure Copper found her way back to you. I read about his struggle with a disease that stole his memories but couldn't steal his heart. Thomas Mercer was a good man who fought in Vietnam and came home to raise you with all the love he had. He didn't forget his promise. His mind betrayed him, but his love never did. I brought Copper back to health. She's beautiful, strong, gentle. She's been waiting for you. I don't know if seeing her will help or hurt. I don't know if you can let yourself love her again after losing so much. But I wanted you to know that you weren't forgotten. Not by your grandfather, not by Copper, and not by me. Whatever you decide tomorrow, know that someone cared enough to keep looking. You deserved that much. Respectfully, Jack Hartley. He sealed the letter in an envelope and added it to the folder of artifacts. He'd give it to the Hendersons to pass along to Lily, whether the reunion succeeded or failed. Emma read it over his shoulder. That's perfect, Dad. I hope so. They spent the evening preparing Copper. Jack groomed her until she shone, trimmed her hooves, brushed her mane and tail until they flowed like silk. Emma helped, learning the rhythms of horse care, asking questions about Copper's personality, her quirks, the way she'd learned to trust again. She's been through so much, Emma said, running the brush along Copper's shoulder. Losing her mom, then her grandfather, then her aunt. Having to give up Copper. Being moved from home to home. How does a kid survive all that? Some don't, Jack said quietly. Some break under it. But some are stronger than anyone gives them credit for. I think Lily is one of the strong ones. She's survived this long. Tomorrow might be the thing that helps her do more than survive. Might help her actually live again. Do you think Copper will recognize her? It's been 4 years. Jack looked at the mare, at her intelligent eyes watching them work. Horses have incredible memories. They can remember people, places, experiences for years. But more than that, I think some bonds go deeper than memory. They're written into the soul. If Copper and Lily had that kind of bond, and everything I've learned says they did, then yes, she'll remember. They loaded Copper into the trailer at dawn Tuesday morning, wanting to arrive early, get the mare settled before Lily arrived. The drive to Helena felt both endless and too short. Jack's hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind raced through scenarios. What would he say to Lily? Should he say anything at all? Maybe the best thing was to step back, let the girl and the horse have their moment without adult interference. The Morgan Equestrian Center was small and well-maintained, just a barn, a covered arena, and a few paddocks. The owner, Mrs. Morgan, met them at the gate and showed them where to park. She was an older woman with kind eyes who'd been briefed by the Hendersons. "I've set up the round pen," she said. "Private, enclosed, safe. You can get the horse settled there. The family should arrive around 2. Jack backed Copper out of the trailer. The mare stepped down calmly, looked around with interest but no fear. She'd come so far from the traumatized animal he'd found. Now she was confident, healthy, ready for whatever came next. He led her to the round pen, a circular enclosure about 50 feet across, with solid walls about 5 feet high. Perfect for what they needed. Private enough for an intimate reunion, safe enough that nothing could go wrong. He turned Copper loose inside, and she investigated the space, sniffing at the sand, checking the water trough Mrs. Morgan had filled. Emma stood beside him at the fence. 2 hours to go. Yeah. You going to be okay? I don't know. This is it, Em. This is what everything's been building toward. 2 months of work, of searching, of hoping. It all comes down to the next few hours. Whatever happens, you've done something incredible. You know that, right? Jack thought about Thomas Mercer's journal, about the entries that grew more confused and desperate as the disease took hold. About the promise Thomas had tried so hard to keep. About Lily's letters to Catherine, the hope slowly dying in each one. About all the moments of loss and grief and abandonment that had led to this point. "I just want her to have this one thing back," Jack said. "Out of everything she's lost, I want her to have this one thing." They waited. Mrs. Morgan brought them coffee and left them alone. Rebecca called to check in, offering support and encouragement. Jack walked the perimeter of the property, burning off nervous energy. Emma sat on a bench near the round pen, watching Copper, who seemed perfectly content to stand in the afternoon sun. At 1:55, a car pulled into the parking area. Jack's heart started pounding. He walked back to the round pen where Emma was waiting. Together they watched as 4 people got out of the car. Mark and Susan Henderson, Maria Santos, and a slight figure in jeans and a hoodie, blonde hair pulled back, head down, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. Lily, she looked so small, so fragile, nothing like the joyful child in the photographs. This was a girl who'd learned to make herself invisible, who'd survived by not hoping for anything. Jack took a deep breath. This was it, the moment everything had been leading toward. He touched the letter in his pocket, said a silent prayer to whatever power might be listening, and waited for Lily to look up. The group approached slowly. Maria led the way, with the Hendersons flanking Lily protectively. The girl kept her eyes on the ground, her shoulders hunched, every line of her body screaming defense and withdrawal. Jack stepped forward, but Maria caught his eye and gave a subtle shake of her head. Not yet, let Lily come to it in her own time. They gathered near the round pen, maybe 20 feet away. Copper was on the far side, grazing at some hay Jack had scattered. She hadn't seen the group yet, or if she had, she was choosing to ignore them. Susan Henderson spoke gently. "Lily, this is Jack Hartley. He's the man who found Copper, and this is his daughter, Emma." Lily's head came up slightly. She looked at Jack with wary eyes that were too old for her 13 years. Eyes that had seen too much loss, that expected betrayal, that were prepared for disappointment. She didn't speak. Jack kept his distance, kept his voice low and calm. "Hello, Lily. I'm glad to meet you. Your grandfather wrote about you in his journal. He loved you very much." Still no response. Lily's gaze flicked toward the round pen, then away, like she couldn't bear to look directly at what might be there. "That's Copper," Jack said. "She's been waiting for you." Lily's face crumpled for just a second before she locked it down again. "She doesn't remember me. It's been too long. Why don't we find out?" Maria said gently. "You don't have to go in there if you don't want to. You don't have to do anything. But maybe you could just look at her, just to see." Lily took a shaky step forward, then another. She moved, like she was approaching a bomb that might explode, terrified but drawn forward despite herself. She reached the fence of the round pen and gripped the top rail with white-knuckled hands. Copper was still on the far side, her back to them, peacefully eating hay. Just a horse doing horse things, unaware of the monumental moment unfolding. "She's bigger than I remember," Lily whispered. "Her mane is longer. She's healthy now," Jack said quietly. "When I found her, she was starving. But we fixed that. She's strong again." Lily's jaw trembled. "Why didn't she come find me? Why didn't anyone come?" The question broke Jack's heart. "Your grandfather tried, Lily. He wrote about it in his journal over and over. He wanted to get Copper to you, but the Alzheimer's made him forget. And then your Aunt Catherine couldn't manage it. And then things happened that nobody planned for. But Copper never forgot you. She was wearing something you gave her. Something you put in her mane before you had to leave." Lily turned to look at him, confusion and hope warring in her expression. "What?" Jack pulled out the locket and the sealed bag with the braid of hair. He handed them to her carefully. "These, you left these with her. She kept them for 4 years, tangled in her mane, close to her heart. She never forgot you, Lily, not for one day." Lily stared at the locket, at her own blonde hair braided and preserved. Her hands shook as she opened the locket and saw the tiny photos of herself and her grandfather. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I thought she was dead," Lily choked out. I thought everyone left me, and I thought she died, and I would never see her again, and I tried not to care, but I couldn't stop dreaming about her, and I missed her so much." The words tumbled out in a rush. Years of grief breaking through the walls she'd built. Susan Henderson moved closer, put a hand on Lily's shoulder, but the girl barely noticed. She was staring at the locket like it was a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. "She's alive," Jack said. "She's right here. And she's been waiting for you." Lily looked back at the round pen, at Copper still grazing peacefully. "What if she doesn't know me? What if I'm not the same and she doesn't want me anymore?" "There's only one way to find out," Emma said softly. She'd been quiet until now, but something in her tone made Lily look at her. "But I think she'll know you. Real love doesn't forget, even when everything else changes." Lily wiped her face with her sleeve, then took a deep breath. She was still terrified. Jack could see it in every line of her body. But she was also brave. Brave enough to hope one more time, even though hope had broken her before. "Can I go in?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible. "Of course," Mark Henderson said. "Take all the time you need." Jack walked to the gate and opened it slowly. Lily approached it like she was approaching the edge of a cliff. She stopped at the threshold, looking in at Copper's distant form. "You don't have to rush," Jack said quietly. "Just step inside. Let her see you." Lily nodded, unable to speak. She stepped through the gate, and Jack closed it softly behind her. The girl stood just inside, frozen, her arms wrapped around herself again. She and Copper were maybe 40 feet apart, the horse still oblivious, the girl paralyzed with fear and hope. "Copper," Lily whispered. The name came out cracked, broken. Nothing happened for a moment. Then Copper's ears swiveled backward toward the sound. The mare lifted her head from the hay, turned to look over her shoulder. For a heartbeat, everything was still. The mare and the girl, separated by 40 feet and 4 years of loss, looking at each other across an impossible distance. Then Copper's whole body changed. Her head came up fully, ears shooting forward. She made a sound, a low whinny that built into something deeper, more urgent, recognition. "Oh my God," Emma breathed beside Jack. "She knows!" Copper spun and walked toward Lily. Not running, not desperate, but purposeful, certain. Her pace quickened as she closed the distance. Lily stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, unable to move or speak or do anything but stare. The mare reached her and immediately pushed her nose into Lily's chest, breathing deeply, taking in her scent, making sure, confirming what her eyes and ears had already told her. Then Copper began making sounds Jack had never heard from her. Little nickers, whinnies, almost like she was talking. Like she was saying, "Where have you been? I've missed you. I've been waiting." Lily's arms came up slowly, shakily, and wrapped around Copper's neck. The girl buried her face in the mare's mane and sobbed. Not quiet tears, not controlled grief, but wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken inside her. Copper stood absolutely still, her neck curved around the girl, holding her, anchoring her. The mare's eyes were soft, gentle, patient. She made more of those small sounds, comforting, reassuring. "You remember me," Lily gasped between sobs. "You remember. You didn't forget. You didn't leave me." The mare pressed closer and Lily sagged against her, all the walls crumbling, all the armor falling away. She was just a 13-year-old girl who'd lost everything, finally getting one piece of her world back. Jack felt his own eyes burning. Emma was crying openly beside him. Susan Henderson had her hand over her mouth, tears running down her face. Mark's jaw was clenched, fighting emotion. Even Maria, who'd surely seen countless difficult cases in her career, looked shaken. "I missed you so much," Lily was saying, the words muffled against Copper's neck. "I missed you every day. I dreamed about you. I tried to forget, but I couldn't. I love you. I love you so much." Copper continued to hold her, patient as a saint, steady as a rock. The mare seemed to understand that what Lily needed most was to be held, to be accepted, to be loved unconditionally in a way that asked nothing in return. Minutes passed. The group at the fence stayed quiet, bearing witness to something sacred. The reunion of two souls who'd been torn apart by circumstances neither could control, finding their way back to each other against impossible odds. Finally, Lily pulled back just enough to look at Copper's face. The mare lowered her head so they were eye to eye. Lily reached up with trembling hands and touched Copper's face, tracing the white star on her forehead, running her fingers along the mare's jaw. "You're really here," Lily whispered. "You're really real. This isn't a dream." Copper nickered softly as if answering. "I'm here." "I've always been here." Lily laughed, a sound that was half sob, half joy. It was the first time anyone had heard her laugh in 2 years. "I can't believe someone found you. I can't believe someone cared enough to look for me." She turned then, looking back at Jack standing by the fence. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen, but there was something in her expression that hadn't been there before. Light, hope, life. "Thank you," she said, her voice small but clear. "Thank you for finding her. Thank you for saving her. Thank you for bringing her back to me." Jack's throat was too tight to speak. He just nodded, hoping she could see everything he felt in that simple gesture. The group gave Lily space for another 20 minutes. She stayed with Copper, sometimes talking to her, sometimes just standing in silence with her arms around the mare's neck. Copper remained patient, attentive, occasionally nuzzling Lily's hair or shoulder, as if reassuring herself the girl was real. Eventually, Maria approached the fence. "Lily, honey, can we come in and talk for a bit?" Lily looked up, and Jack saw the fear flicker back into her eyes. Fear that this would be taken away, that it was too good to be true, that the reunion would end here and now. "It's okay," Susan Henderson said quickly. "We just want to talk about what happens next." Jack opened the gate, and the adults entered slowly. Lily kept one hand on Copper's neck as if anchoring herself. The mare stayed close to the girl's side, protective. Mark Henderson spoke first. "Lily, Mr. Hartley has something to show you. Something your grandfather left behind." Jack pulled out the journal and the folder of documents. He handed them to Lily carefully. "Your grandfather wrote this. It's his journal from the last few years, before he went into the care facility. He wrote a lot about you, about how much he loved you, about Copper." Lily took the journal with reverence, opened it to a random page. Jack had marked several entries with sticky notes, ones he thought she should read. She read silently, her fingers tracing the words her grandfather had written. When she reached the entry where Thomas wrote about promising to get Copper to her, Lily's face crumpled again. "He tried," she whispered. "He really tried. He never stopped trying," Jack said. "Even when the disease took his memories, he remembered you. He remembered his promise. On the very last page he could write clearly. He wrote about making sure Copper got to you. That was his final coherent thought. You." Jack showed her the loose page he'd found, the one that had been tucked in the back of the journal. Thomas's final words, asking whoever found it to keep his promise. Lily read it through tears. "I thought he forgot me. I thought the Alzheimer's made him forget he loved me." "No, sweetheart," Susan said gently. "He forgot almost everything else, but not that." "Never that." Jack handed her the photograph of her and Copper from summer 2019. "And this, you and Copper when you were 8. Look how happy you both were." Lily stared at the photo, at the little girl she used to be, smiling without reservation. "I was so happy then, before everything fell apart." "You can be happy again," Maria said. "That's what we need to talk about. What happens now with Copper?" Fear crossed Lily's face again. "I can't take her. I don't have anywhere to keep her. The Hendersons don't have room for a horse. I can't afford to pay for her care. I can't do anything." "Actually," Mark Henderson said, "that's not entirely true. We've been talking, Susan and I. We have friends who own a small stable about 15 minutes from our house. They board horses for reasonable rates. If we could work out an arrangement, if Mr. Hartley was willing, maybe Copper could stay there. You could visit her regularly, help care for her, spend time with her." Lily's eyes went wide. "Really? You'd let me do that?" "We think it would be good for you," Susan said. "We've watched you struggle for 18 months, watched you close yourself off from everything. But today, seeing you with Copper, we saw something we haven't seen since you came to us. We saw you alive again. But who would own her? Who would pay for everything?" Jack had been waiting for this moment. He pulled out one more document, one he'd had his lawyer prepare over the last few days, just in case this moment came. "I'm going to give Copper to you," Jack said. "Legal ownership transfer, all documented. She's yours, Lily, she always was. I was just keeping her safe until I could find you. But the boarding costs, the vet bills, the feed, I'll cover it," Jack said, "for as long as it takes. Your grandfather was a veteran like me. We take care of our own. And Copper isn't expensive to keep. I've been managing it fine. I can keep managing it." "Why would you do that?" Lily asked, her voice breaking. "Why would you do all this for someone you don't even know?" Jack thought about Sarah, about Emma, about 3 years of grief and isolation, about finding purpose in the most unexpected place, in a chained horse and a forgotten promise. "Because your grandfather asked someone to help. And I happened to be the one who found his request. Because Copper needed saving and you needed finding. Because sometimes we get second chances to do the right thing, and I wasn't going to waste mine." He paused, pulled out the final piece. "And because of this." From his pocket, he withdrew Thomas's purple heart in its presentation box. He opened it and showed Lily the medal her grandfather had earned in Vietnam. "Your grandfather was a Marine," Jack said quietly. "He fought in Vietnam. He was wounded and received this medal for his sacrifice. He was a hero, Lily. He served his country with honor. And then he came home and raised you with that same dedication, that same love. When his mind failed him, I couldn't let his final mission fail, too. Marines don't leave anyone behind. Veterans don't leave each other behind. Your grandfather would have done the same for me." Lily took the medal box with shaking hands. She stared at the purple heart, at the inscription with her grandfather's name. "I didn't know. He never talked about the war. A lot of veterans don't, but it was part of who he was, part of what made him the man who loved you so fiercely." Jack met her eyes. "This belongs to you now, along with the journal, the photographs, the locket, your grandfather's legacy. And Copper, all of it is yours." Lily looked overwhelmed, clutching the medal box to her chest. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Emma said, speaking up for the first time since entering the pen. "Just accept it. Let yourself have this good thing. You deserve it." Maria stepped forward. "There are logistics we need to work out. Boarding agreements, veterinary care schedules, visitation arrangements. But Mark and Susan are right. This could be really good for you, Lily. Having something to care for, something that depends on you, something that loves you unconditionally. That's powerful medicine. But what if I mess it up?" Lily asked, the vulnerability raw in her voice. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't take care of her right?" "You won't be alone," Jack said. "I'll teach you everything you need to know. I'll be available whenever you need help or advice. And the people at the stable, they'll help too. You'll have support. And we'll be there," Susan added, "every step of the way." Lily looked at Copper, who stood patiently beside her, then back at the adults surrounding her. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, yes. I want this. I want her back." The relief and joy that crossed the Hendersons' faces was profound. Maria smiled, the first real smile Jack had seen from her. Emma wiped her eyes again. "There's one more thing," Jack said. He pulled out the letter he'd written, the one he'd composed the night before. "I wrote this for you. You can read it now or later, whatever feels right. But it explains everything. Why I did this, what it meant to me, what I hope it means for you." Lily took the letter and tucked it carefully into the journal. "I'll read it tonight, when I can be alone and really take it in." She turned to Jack fully then, and despite her tear-stained face and red eyes, there was strength in her expression. This girl had survived more than most people face in a lifetime. She was wounded but not broken. "Mr. Hartley, I don't think I can ever thank you enough. You gave me back the one thing I thought I'd lost forever. You gave me back hope." Jack's voice was rough when he spoke. "Your grandfather gave you hope. I just delivered it. And please, call me Jack. Jack." Lily tried the name out, then nodded. "When can I see her again?" "Copper, when can I come back?" "As soon as we get her moved to the stable," Mark said. "Maybe this weekend. We'll get everything arranged, and then you can start visiting her regularly." "Every day?" Lily asked hopefully. "If you want. We'll work it out." For the first time, Lily smiled. It was tentative, uncertain, but real. A glimpse of the happy child from the photographs, the one who'd been buried under years of loss and trauma. She turned back to Copper and wrapped her arms around the mare's neck one more time. "I'll see you soon," she whispered. "I promise. No matter what happens, I'll come back for you. I won't leave you again." Copper nickered softly, and Lily laughed through fresh tears. It was the sound of something broken beginning to heal, of a girl remembering how to hope, of a promise finally kept. Jack watched them together and felt a weight lift from his chest that he'd been carrying for 3 years. Since Sarah died, since he'd lost his way, this right here, this moment of reunion and healing and hope restored. This was what it meant to have purpose again. This was what it meant to matter. 2 weeks later, Jack stood in his driveway watching as a custom leather halter was delivered. He'd commissioned it from a local craftsman, deep brown leather with brass fittings. And engraved on the brass nameplate were the words, "Copper, Lily's horse." It was a small thing, but it felt important. Official recognition of what had always been true, what should never have been broken. Copper belonged to Lily, always had, always would. The mare had been moved to Valley View Stables the weekend after the reunion. It was a small, well-maintained facility with good people who understood the significance of what this horse meant to the girl who visited her every single day after school. Jack drove up to Helena every few days, checking on Copper, helping Lily learn the finer points of horse care, teaching her how to pick hooves properly, how to recognize signs of illness, how to groom efficiently. The girl was a sponge, absorbing everything, asking intelligent questions, growing more confident with each visit. The change in Lily was remarkable. Susan Henderson had called Jack in tears one evening, happy tears, telling him that Lily had joined the school's equestrian club, that she'd made a friend, another girl who loved horses, that she'd smiled at dinner 3 nights in a row. "You gave us our daughter back," Susan had said, and Jack had to correct her gently. "No, Copper gave you your daughter back. I just made the introduction." Now, standing in the barn at Valley View Stables, Jack presented the custom halter to Lily. Her eyes went wide when she saw the engraving. "It's perfect," she breathed, running her fingers over the brass plate. "Can we put it on her?" Together, they fitted the halter onto Copper. The mare stood patient and proud, as if she understood the significance. Lily stepped back to admire it, and Jack saw tears in her eyes again. But these were different from the tears at their first reunion. These were tears of joy, of gratitude, of a future that suddenly held possibility. Thanksgiving arrived with early snow dusting the Montana mountains. Jack's cabin, which had stood empty and silent for so long, was filled with voices and laughter for the first time in years. Emma had flown in the night before. Rebecca arrived mid-morning with homemade pies. The Hendersons came with Lily, along with Maria Santos, who'd become more friend than caseworker over the past weeks. Deputy Martinez stopped by briefly, curious to see how the story had ended, bringing a bottle of wine and her good wishes. Before dinner, Jack brought out a wooden box he'd spent the last month crafting in his workshop. It was simple, but beautiful, made from cherry wood with a brass latch. He'd lined the interior with felt and carved Lily's name into the lid. "This is for you," he told Lily, "for keeping your grandfather's things safe." Inside the box, Jack had arranged everything. Thomas's journal, carefully preserved, the photographs of Lily and Copper, of Thomas and Katie, the locket and the braid of blonde hair, the purple heart in its presentation box, the letters Lily had written to Catherine, the child's drawing that said, "I love you, Grandpa Tom." All the pieces of a life, of a love, of a family torn apart by tragedy and brought back together by chance and determination and a promise kept. Lily opened the box and stared at the contents, her hands hovering over each item as if they were sacred relics. "This is my grandfather's legacy," she said quietly. "No," Jack corrected gently. "You are your grandfather's legacy. These are just reminders of how much you were loved, how much you still are." Mark Henderson cleared his throat. "Actually, we have an announcement. Susan and I have been talking, and we've decided to begin the process of adopting Lily, if she wants that, making it official, making her our daughter permanently. Lily's head snapped up, shock written across her face. Really? You want to adopt me? We love you, sweetheart, Susan said, her voice thick with emotion. We want you to be ours. We want to be your family. Lily launched herself at Susan, wrapping her arms around her in a fierce hug. Yes, I want that. I want to stay. The room erupted in congratulations and tears. Maria was wiping her eyes, saying something about how rare happy endings were in her line of work. Rebecca hugged Jack tight, whispering that Sarah would be so proud. Emma sat beside her father on the couch and took his hand. You did it, Dad. You kept the promise. We did it, Jack corrected. You, me, Rebecca, the Hendersons, Maria, everyone who cared enough to help. No, Emma said firmly. This started with you. You're the one who pulled over that day. You're the one who couldn't walk away. You're the one who spent 2 months tracking down a little girl nobody else was looking for. Don't diminish that. As they gathered around the table for dinner, Jack looked at the faces surrounding him. His daughter, present and engaged in a way she hadn't been in years. Rebecca, who'd become a true friend. The Hendersons and Lily, a family being built from broken pieces. Maria, who'd bent rules and taken risks because she believed in second chances. All of them here because a neglected horse and a forgotten journal had crossed his path on a September morning. Before they ate, Mark asked if anyone wanted to say grace. Jack, who hadn't prayed since Sarah's funeral, found himself speaking. I'm thankful for second chances, for the opportunity to keep a promise made by a good man who couldn't keep it himself, for everyone at this table who helped make that possible, and for Thomas Mercer, who loved his granddaughter enough that even death couldn't break his promise. May we all love that fiercely. And for Copper, Lily added softly. For waiting for me. For Copper, everyone echoed. They ate and talked and laughed, and Jack felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Peace, purpose, connection, home. Later, as the evening wound down and guests prepared to leave, Lily approached Jack one more time. She held the memory box carefully, reverently. Jack, I read your letter. The one you wrote me before we met. Yeah? You said you didn't know if seeing Copper would help or hurt, but you wanted me to know I wasn't forgotten. Lily's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I need you to know something too. You didn't just give me back Copper. You gave me back myself. The part of me I thought died with everyone else. Thank you for not forgetting me either. Jack pulled her into a gentle hug. This girl who'd lost so much and survived anyway. Nobody's forgetting you again, Lily. You've got a whole family now. You're not alone anymore. Neither are you, Lily said, and Jack realized she was right. Somewhere along this journey, he'd stopped being alone too.